Hi everyone, I'm Victoria Mitchell, Director of Exhibits and Programs here at Exploration Place. And for the second year in a row, we are partnering with the Kansas African American Museum on an amazing Black History Month display. With me today, I have Denise. Thank you so much for joining us. Denise Sherman is
I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas African American Museum, and we are so excited to be a part of this. Last year was phenomenal. It was our first time in going in this direction, and we really loved the opportunity. So we're excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I'm really glad we get to do this partnership again. It's really important for our community that we highlight African American scientists in our community that both have supported Wichita, Kansas, and the United States in their careers as scientists. And it's really important for us to be able to honor them and show minorities, including African Americans, that they have a place in the scientific community and encourage them to be creative and pursue their passions.
And as you share that, Victoria, you know, the wonderful thing about it is it's just not locally and statewide, but it's globally. And so often the stories aren't told. And so having this opportunity to not only honor and display and share, but let others know that there's wonderful things that come out of Kansas, as well as African Americans across the United States and beyond. And so I'm just excited. You know, science and STEM is such a hot topic, and it's so important in the development of our youth. And so being able to highlight the wonderful cultural contributions is just exciting.
Yeah. So during year one, we highlighted specifically Earth and space scientists, but this year we're going a little broader, and we have 4 scientists, 2 of which are still alive today, that we're going to honor, and they come from various STEM careers. They will each be highlighted through a display, a projection display at Exploration Place on the outside of our island building. And you can see that once the sun goes down. And we'll also have a display indoors, as well as this video and information on both our website and the Kansas African American Museum's website.
Yes, and we're excited about that because not only can they see the visual aspect of this, the scientists, but then they can also learn more and find out about their journey and their story and how they contributed. So I'm excited.
Perfect. All right, let's get talking about Junius Groves. Junius is a really cool guy because he was an exoduster, and I learned that term. This is my education while researching for filming this video, meaning that he was born into slavery, and when the emancipation happened, there was a huge exodus of slaves moving into the Kansas area, and he was one of those.
Absolutely, and that story in itself is very interesting because many may not know that the Exoduster movement was led by Benjamin Pap Singleton, and he led many African Americans who, again, felt that their situation in the Deep South after emancipation was not going to be fruitful. Kansas was considered the promised land, and so many agriculturalists came to Kansas and set up throughout the state. And Junius Groves was one of them. And so with that, he became, in his time, the potato king of the world. And in doing so, he outpaced many people in producing potatoes in Kansas. Many people think potato capital is Idaho, but it was actually right here in Kansas with an African American man. And in his peak, he was producing over 700,000 potatoes. Within 500 acres of land in Edwardsville, Kansas. And the exciting thing about that is that not only was he an agriculturist who was able to produce others, people find it very interesting of all of his entrepreneurial efforts that supported an ecosystem to help him with his potato efforts.
Yeah, he founded multiple organizations, one of which is still alive today, and he even owned general stores and stock in companies outside of the United States. Like, I was reading and at his peak he was worth $300,000 in the early 1900s, I think it was 1913. That translates to just under $9 million today.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was like by far the richest man in the area, and he surpassed many of his white competitors, and obviously it caused a lot of tension at times in his life, but he persevered and pushed forward, and he really just is an amazing role model for entrepreneurship and letting it, roll off your back and just moving forward for his family. So I mean, the Union Pacific Railroad built an entire spur specifically to go to his property. So he was just really, I learned a lot when I was researching him, and I am in awe of everything he was able to accomplish considering his very rough beginning of life.
Well, and in summary, as we encourage you to, go to our website and learn more about Junius Groves, it was not only potatoes, but it was fruits and vegetables. And even, again, he really elevated the life of not only African Americans, but people in the entire community. I just find it very interesting that Edwardsville, which was outside of the Kansas City area, was such an integral part of developing Kansas. Yeah, so we encourage you to find out more about Junius Groves.
All right, so we're going to start talking about our next honoree, who is Dr. Rochelle Burks. So Dr. Rochelle Burks is a forensic scientist or analytical chemist. Both of those terms are kind of used interchangeably when looking at her history. She's still alive today. She works in DC as an associate professor of analytical chemistry. And she specifically looks at creating techniques and technology that is accessible, inexpensive, reliable, and portable. So when companies or police departments and fire departments are going out looking and trying to find evidence, they can process that evidence in a reliable way on site instead of having to collect that evidence and send it to a lab thousands of miles away potentially, and it leave more hands. So the more times you have to exchange that evidence, the more likely that something gets messed up. So this will help make things more efficient and more reliable. And I really appreciate her for doing that. But she's also been on TV many times. She's been on the Science Channel, and one of my favorite videos that I found of her was a Nova PBS special. They did a movie about women in science, and Dr. Rochelle specifically talks about her experiences as an African American woman in science fields and how that has been how that has negatively impacted her work. As an advocate, she has experienced misogyny. She's experienced flat-out abuse from colleagues in the field, and she's very open about that. So I appreciate her for doing that because it provides transparency and allows her to advocate for things to change.
You shared with me earlier some statistics about African American women in STEM programming, and so it wasn't as many as we really think should be. Right.
So in the doctoral world, so your PhDs, only about a quarter, 25% of those PhDs are awarded to women, and that's all women. But African American women only make up 2.2% of that, according to numbers that I looked at from 2016. So it's possibly increased slightly, but not nearly enough compared to the population. So right. The population is highly misrepresented within STEM fields, and especially at the doctorate level.
Well, then that just goes to show how important this collaboration, as well as allowing and sharing and getting young women and just young people, period, into places like Exploration Place, where they can be exposed early in life to the wonderful sciences, and also, start to figure out how they can be a part of that. And who knows, of the many young people who come through Exploration Place may grow up to be the next Rochelle Burks.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's really great because it allows us to encourage those connections. But there's just something also to be said about about having pride, even if they don't end up being inspired and pursuing a career in forensic science to be the next Dr. Rochelle Burks. But they just begin to have more pride for the African American community and the African American experience,
Absolutely.
which I think is just as important.
So while at the Kansas African American Museum, we mainly focus on African Americans who are from Kansas or have Kansas connection. Dr. Rochelle Burks actually has experiences in the Midwest in her educational pursuits, Nebraska and Iowa, and so we certainly appreciate that she has experiences, in neighboring states, and so wanted to just point that out.
Yeah, so she's our first honoree that is currently still alive, but our next honoree is also still alive, and we're going to talk about Dr. Ken Carter. Dr. Carter is a psychologist, which means he studies the science of the brain and how that is impacting individuals, but also impacting how we learn and how we experience the world as well. And he's just a really fascinating guy.
Well, I think Dr. Carter would love what's going on here at Exploration Place.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things that you all provide is an immersive experience where people can come in and have an opportunity to learn more about the different sciences, and it engages all of their senses.
You're right. So there are lots of opportunities, I think, here at Exploration Place where people can maybe explore a little bit of their brain science and their adrenaline. Dr. Carter's current project is a book called Buzz, where he is studying the science of thrill seeking and how that affects an individual, their community, and the culture. And we're able to maybe replicate a little bit of that here at Exploration Place in our Dome Theater, where you really can feel like you're flying in our Kansas Immersive Experience movie. You can go into our Live Science Theater and maybe get scared by a dinosaur, or thunder might make you jump out of your seat. And all of these things get your adrenaline raised. And one thing that thrill seekers can be dare I say, addicted to, is that raise in their adrenaline and how it changes their body. And I think Dr. Carter's research on that has been really insightful on how we can continue to build those thrill-seeking moments within a safe environment for our kids to learn and explore how that affects them.
And if I wanted to learn more about my thrill-seeking quotient, what other ways can I do that?
So Dr. Carter actually created a quiz, and it's on his website. I'll make sure that that is linked on our website so that you can take that quiz. And there's two versions. There's the short version and the long version. The long version obviously gets you a more detailed and accurate response, but you can take that quiz and find out if you are a thrill seeker or if you'd rather sit on the beach and read a book like I would.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I will be taking the quiz.
Awesome. Okay, so for the last honoree, we have someone who's very special to Kansas, and I'm gonna let Denise tell you a little bit about her.
Well, thank you. You know, we are so excited to talk about June Bacon Bursey because she was born here in Wichita, Kansas, went to Wichita, Kansas schools, attended Friends University, but finished her bachelor's degree at UCLA. And June Bacon Bursey was the first African-American meteorologist. And she set forth a trajectory of opportunities for many African Americans to go into the oceanic and atmospheric sciences through her own journey, her research, and the fact that she was just so such a trailblazer in that area. And in fact, this year at the Kansas African American Museum, we honored her, we inducted her to our program called A Tribute to Trailblazers, where we honor African Americans from Kansas or who have a Kansas connection who have gone on to do amazing things. And in doing so, we really learned a lot about her opportunity to change STEM in so many ways. We talked earlier about Dr. Burks and the number of African American women who are not necessarily in the STEM professions. But June Bacon Bursey, early in the 60s and 70s, was a pioneer. So I really appreciate the fact that she is included this year in Exploration Place's Black History display.
Yes, so June is, as you said, a pioneer, or was a pioneer. She passed away a few years ago. But she really left quite the legacy,
Yes,
and
she
had
did.
some amazing experiences throughout her life. So I'm really, really happy that you suggested we include her as another Kansas connection. So we wanted to end this year's honorees with June, since she is a recent trailblazer, and also because of her big connection with Kansas. When I was doing my research about June, I found my favorite fun fact, which is that she really loved and knew a lot about John Philip Sousa, which my band Nerd Self was very happy about. And that's how she was able to set up the fund, the scholarship fund that she had in her name for students to learn more and go to college for atmospheric and oceanic sciences.
Yes, and I believe the show was the $64,000 question.
Oh.
And with that, it just shows you how dedicated she was, that she would do whatever it took to seed into this and to provide opportunities with the funds that she won to start this wonderful program, which I understand is there are more African Americans that go through her programs and are a part of her legacy and scholarship than any others.
Wow, I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
I knew that it took a hiatus in the 90s, but they've recently brought it back. Was one of her last wishes before she passed was to have that scholarship fund reinstated. She's a really just powerful woman, and she did a lot of amazing things for the community, and putting a African American woman on television as at the time a weather girl, but she's a science explainer, really is what it comes down to.
And really, Victoria, it was during a time when there were not African Americans on TV in the broadcast world. So this was really, again, being a pioneer and taking advantage and being prepared when the opportunity came. And that she became the chief meteorologist, I think, within a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that was really unheard of. So, we pay homage to her, and I think that it's really important that we continue to uplift and share these stories, because the journey, the stories, the challenges, the opportunities, and the accomplishments are so important, not just for the African American community, but for all communities.
June Bacon-Bursey was just such an impact on the Wichita community and on the United States. She was involved in so many national organizations, both as an employer and as a representative, and she never stopped asking why. You always have to continue to ask the why questions as a scientist so that you can continue to discover and learn more. And so that's a big part of the reason why I have enjoyed learning about June, and am excited for her to be a part of it.
All of these honorees are incredible.
They are, and we encourage all of you at home to come visit the exhibit in person, and we'll see you soon.